This is like my personal statement, having had a pretty significant career in really large organizations, in places that I've spent 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think today's climate is, especially for super senior folks, you are the first ones on the block. They need to cut costs. Things aren't going right. It's your fault. And especially marketing has a tenure on average of a CMO is 12 to 18 months. Not a lot of safety or security in that framework.
Deb Stambaugh is an entrepreneur and former marketing executive for global brands like Samsung and the ad tech company Quantcast.
Especially as a woman in technology, I was often either the only woman in the room or the only female commercial leader in the room. It would almost always be Deb and an HR person, and everybody else was men. I wanted to give back to people because I would have loved that in my 20s. Some woman that had 20 years experience on me saying like, actually, don't worry about XYZ or go do this. That was kind of the spark. I was like, well, why am I going to go put my life into somebody else's hands of something I don't actually want? There's a lot less loyalty. There's a lot less sort of security within that full-time role. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to really put my life into somebody else's hands anymore. I'm like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now.
What's up, everybody? My name's Alex Lobert, and welcome to the best job I've ever had. What happens when a chief marketing officer for a tech company trades the corner office for the uncertainties of entrepreneurship? I try to answer that question with today's guest, Deb Stambaugh. Deb was the chief marketing officer for the advertising technology company Quantcast. She also was one of the people who helped scale Samsung's advertising business from basically nothing to now being over $500 million business. After 2 decades in big tech, Deb hit the reset button and launched Brave New World, her marketing consultancy that just actually celebrated its 2-year anniversary. In this conversation, we dive into why Deb thinks it's safer to run her own shop than have a traditional C-suite seat. We also talk about the importance of being open for opportunity and how that actually took her at one point to Africa to work with Bono's organization Red. And finally, we dig into the importance of championing women in tech and giving women leaders they can relate to and look up to that really understand the often unseen work that they shoulder. I really enjoyed this conversation. Stick around for Deb's advice on grit over genius and the story of how a Nanette Lepore dress actually might have been one of her greatest investments. Here's Deb Stambaugh. Deb, welcome to the show.
Alex, thank you so much for having me here.
I am very excited to have this conversation. Can I actually just start by saying you are a really good LinkedIn follow?
Yeah?
So, yeah.
Do tell.
Yeah, it's both like very insightful, but also very engaging content. And my favorite,
Yes.
as I was doing a little bit of research for this conversation,
No.
your post about Mother's Day, or rather Mother's Monday.
Mother's Monday. It was my campaign for a new holiday.
Exactly. And I both loved that. Like, I'm like reading it. I'm like, oh, this resonates. Like, okay, a little consumerist. Like, we need to be giving Mother's Day off, like 100%. Yep. And then at the end, you hit me with some Snoop Dogg lyrics. And I'm like, oh, yes. LinkedIn needs more Snoop Dogg.
LinkedIn does need more. Everybody needs more Snoop Dogg. I mean, Martha got religion with Snoop Dogg. Yeah. So quickly, the thesis was Mother's Day is on Sunday. Mothers are forced to, try to be everything to everyone. And the people trying to celebrate them are trying to be everything to everyone. And shouldn't it be on a Monday to give those mothers actually the day off? Right? Wouldn't that make more sense? And then, yes, Snoop Dogg, I quoted him of, I'd like to thank myself.
100%. So actually, maybe surprise news, but my wife is expecting. So she is going to love this. Yes. She's going to love this idea come next year. If we can actually, we might should make a new push for
You
Mother's
should.
Monday.
I actually had a couple of people ask me this year. They're like, what happened to Mother's Day Monday? I'm like, oh, I celebrated on Sunday. But maybe we'll go again. Alex, I'm going to enlist you to help me amplify the new holiday.
100%. I will
very
much in.
All right, let's do it.
So beyond being a great LinkedIn follow, please everyone go follow Deb.
like really a lot of fun insights. You've had a really cool career. Can I just I'm just going to list off like a couple highlights before we dive into it, but you reached the, I think, pinnacle for most marketers, becoming a chief marketing officer.
I did.
You helped scale and basically grow Samsung ads into the business that it is today. And I looked it up. It's not public, but 500 million, maybe larger today. So it's like a serious ads business. And you have started your own company with Brave New World.
I did.
So really cool stuff throughout your career. So this is going to be a very fun conversation.
Thank you. I'm
really
excited to have
appreciate
it. Yes.
you being here.
Yeah.
But all right, how about we dive into the most important question?
Of course.
Deb, what is the best job that you've ever had?
So this sounds a little cliche, Alex, but honestly, the best job I've ever had, I think, is my job now. So I created Brave New World. We're going to be on at 2 years, which I actually understand is like a pretty big feat for most entrepreneurs of lasting more than a year. So that was something that somebody just recently told me, like less than 2% of all businesses last more than a year. So very proud of that. But really, it's funny. I think Brave New World is kind of what I've been working my whole career for. So let me tell you first what it is. So we are a marketing strategy consultancy. I am leading anything from fractional to project-based, positioning, messaging, product marketing, sales enablement, org design, et cetera. I think the cool thing about it is that I'm never alone. I always bring in a team of experts with me, depending upon what the client needs. I call it and I think given today's environment of massive rifts of super experienced and educated people, there's a whole wealth of talent out there available. And it allows me to really serve those clients in a way that they need. I've got a lot of natural curiosity. Oftentimes my friends will tell me I am grilling them about their business or about what's happening for them professionally around business. So that's really served me well. I'm now working across multiple categories, from media to corporate real estate to supply chain, FinServe, healthcare, and it allows me to help people, right? So one of the mantras that I talk about a lot in terms of Brave New World is what's best for the business. And I think it goes back to a little bit of being sort of that mom of three of I'm always trying to help people. And really it's, no bias, no politics. It's really about let me give you my honest perspective and expertise about how I can help you.
That's so cool. I love this idea that you're never alone, because I think that's one of the, I don't know if it's fears or maybe challenges of often being an entrepreneur, especially starting a business. And by the way, 100% congrats on making it 2 years.
Thank you.
That is super cool. I don't want to gloss over that. That is really cool. But being able to have people with you on these engagements probably, I assume, combats some of the loneliness of it. But also, again, you get that expertise. So actually, I love your thoughts here. How do you pick who you're working, who you bring on with engagements? I think it's a really cool model.
Yeah. I mean, it really started. So I started it again, about 2 years ago, where I was like, all right, this whole fractional thing is, jumping off. And I had the opportunity to, and the drive to really want to go do that. And it started a couple of different contracts and then had more clients coming at me. I'm like, I'm going to be the bottleneck here, right? This is not going to work. Deb's going to be working 100 hours a week, which is not sustainable. So I just started tapping on a couple of folks to come and join me on these projects and with very specific skill sets. And I think having been a chief marketing officer and having been a marketing leader for so long, I know how to lead and staff, right? I know what an actual project needs. I know what the skill sets look like. So for me, it was very natural to say I haven't operated as a solo independent contributor for years. Why would I start doing that now? That doesn't actually make sense. Let me continue to be a leader. Let me continue to set the strategy and then have people help me to create velocity, to help our clients accelerate their business and bring in different perspectives so that we're really helping to deliver those impact and results, I think, differently than your traditional large-scale consulting firms or even your solopreneurs, where it really is like a team that is delivering, which is how any business works sort of on the regular. We're sort of that built to scale or built to fit model, depending upon what the client needs.
I do think it's right. It's very much a differentiator from people who are solopreneurs, and it does allow you to actually get stuff done. I always think that's one of the probably challenges of being a fractional marketer. And for those who don't know, fractional, you're essentially working with a bunch of different businesses. So as you mentioned, you're consulting.
And you're working like part-time, right? Not a full-time employee, although you're embedded in the business, right? Most of my clients I have emails for, calendars for, which is a whole different challenge. There's an opportunity for AI that hasn't been conquered yet. You are part of the business, and they expect you to act like that. So by having those other experts in there with me that I can say, that I'm really assigning out to versus assigning to my client, which isn't a good idea. We're really able to not only get things done, but do it really rapidly. And again, like drive impact. That's my biggest thing is I have zero interest in delivering, let me just tell you what you should do and good luck to you. It's not hypothetical, right? This is all about, right? How can I help businesses become more successful?
How do you pick your clients? Or how do you get your clients? I always think that's such an interesting dynamic of, again, running your own business. How do you get your clients? How do you pick who to work with? Do you only pick clients you like? I'm curious, what's the dynamic there?
I've been very fortunate to get all of my clients through referral. I do spend a lot of time networking though. So it's not just me sitting and waiting for something to inbound to me. I'm constantly catching up with folks. I do also a lot of mentorship, which, is I think a part of sort of as a senior person in industry is sort of part of our responsibility of like, let's help those people, right? That are looking for support and looking for help. And so I spend a lot of time on the phone with folks. I'm constantly, again, sort of talking about my business or other people's businesses. So I've got a keen interest in just, a lot of curiosity and drive to better understand what's happening out there in the world. And so, really so I've gotten my clients through referral. And when I'm choosing clients, are they serious? Are they passionate? Do they actually believe in what they're asking for? And are they willing to actually drive change? Because oftentimes what is existing within a lot of these situations is it's either an organization that doesn't have marketing assigned to it yet because it's new, right? Either a merger or a new business unit. And so are they really looking to drive something? Yes. Or are they really looking to drive change? So I've done several turnarounds as well where, marketing was sort of falling off a cliff or really not to be trusted for a variety of reasons. And how can we help turn that around? So do we have the right stakeholders? And then is the business viable? Are they not failing? So you don't want that. I've had one of those. That wasn't great.
Can they pay you?
And are they all in? Right. So it's really about, I can get passionate about just about any business. So I was just talking to a private equity partner today of a firm, and he was like, "You're really pivoting across all these different types of businesses." And I'm like, "All of them are interesting. All of them have a different perspective and something else that I'm going to learn from it." So that's super exciting to me.
You mentioned earlier how you're very curious, and right, that obviously drives some of the reason you're like, this would be fun to be a fractional chief marketing officer and run your own business. But I'm curious, can you talk to me a little more about what do you love about running your own business? You mentioned like you've got people so you don't have to work $100 a week. I hope not. Although I know it's hard. Often is hard to run your own business. It takes a lot of time. Like, what do you love about it? Like, also, like, what were you surprised about? Is there anything you're like, oh man, this was a lot harder than I expected?
I think what I love about it is really the diversity, right? Of being able to sort of like mentally pivot across different problems, different challenges, different personalities, politics, characters. So I love the diversity. I love the variety. And that to me is like super interesting, keeps me engaged and keeps me really, sort of passionate and fiery about all of the different roles. I think the thing that was most surprising or that's challenging is, and I say this all the time to folks, working in the business and on the business. So in the business, I know how to do that, right? I know how to run marketing. I know how to build teams. I know how to do an org chart, assign roles, and build a strategy and get things done. The working on the business is a whole other mechanism. The legalities, the bank accounts, the billing, the processes, right? Things that you kind of take for granted, or when you're within an organization, you're like, ugh, why do they do it that way? It's because, right, it's hard. It's actually hard to like sort of stand up processes, make things repeatable. And so that's the thing that I won't say it hasn't been so surprising, but I'm like, oh, I got to do that too. That's been probably the bigger challenge. And then it's not 100 hours, but people are asking, friends and family are always asking me, how's it going? And they're like, oh, you must have you can set your own free time. And I'm like, free time. That's the other thing that I think is people, if you're ever thinking about starting a business, you're always working on your business. So like
Right.
my weeks are now 6-day work weeks for the most part. I try to take Saturday fully off, don't touch the computer. But yeah, you got to put in a couple of hours on Sunday before you hit Monday because it's your business. And if your client calls you on urgently, I try to keep boundaries, but urgently while you're on vacation or something, you might take that call because there's no like PTO. It's no longer PTO. You're just out of office. So it's not paid time off. You're just out of office. So it's that distinction of I can go, you know what? I don't own this. It doesn't really matter. It'll be there when I get back Monday to I'm ultimately responsible. It's either me or there's nobody standing behind me.
What you said is so interesting because to your point about every problem's your problem, right? And you've got to build these processes and stand this up. And, you see the intricacies of how difficult it is to manage a business holistically or create a business holistically. Mm-hmm. But that and the hours, I do think it always sometimes it makes me ask the question. It's like, Deb, why did you want to do it? Right? I know you wanted to see different businesses, but there were probably other ways to do that. Walk me through a little bit, why did you want to do it? What made you feel like this was the path you had to take?
I was at a real inflection point. So I left my CMO job and it was a real opportunity for me to think about. And let me say this, I had another offer on the table. So I left the job, had another offer on the table that I really didn't want. And I was like, damn it. But I need a job and I got to get paid and I've got 3 kids and I'm responsible. And I really didn't want it. And I went back to the CEO of this particular role and I said, how about we start with 6 months? Because fractional again was sort of starting and I just wasn't sure. And there was a lot of travel involved and I just wasn't sure. And I said, how about we start with 6 months? And he was wildly insulted. And he says, well, I'm looking for a marriage. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm looking to date. And I'm married for 20 plus years. So I don't mean like real dating, I mean career dating. And that was kind of the spark. I was like, why am I going to go put my life into somebody else's hands of something I don't actually want? And also at 2 years ago, and even, right, we just saw this with Microsoft, just laid off 9,000 people. There's a lot of change happening within these organizations. There's a lot less loyalty. There's a lot less, sort of security within that full-time role. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to really put my life into somebody else's hands anymore. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. And so I sort of gave myself a deadline of saying okay, by the end of January, I have to have this much in contract value. It's got to look like this. And I had it before the end of December. So this was back in 23. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going. And then it just went.
First of all, that's killer that you saw that growth so quickly and you're able to achieve those guardrails, separate yourself. By the way, setting guardrails, I love that.
Yes.
Right? Being able to really thoughtfully come up with a plan and also, to your point, a way to know if it's not going to work, right? Yeah. Because again, you can commit yourself to a business and go for a long time,
totally.
And have just kind of be only okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Exactly. And so to have that, it's obviously a very mature way to run your business, be able to come up with those guardrails. So very interesting.
It's definitely been a learning curve, right? I really went in with sort of this solo thought but it very quickly became why am I going to do this the way everybody else is, or the way I've perceived everybody else is doing this? And people have really responded to it, both clients as well as folks that are coming and joining my team, because I like selling. I like talking to people all the time. I do it naturally. And so really my selling is just talking to people and listening to them and then having great conversations with them. And then they're like, great, can you come help us? Absolutely. Let's go do this. And, it just becomes a very organic kind of thing. Not everybody loves doing that. So I think that's also been a real boon to people that have worked with me of saying I'm like, great, I've got 3 jobs coming up. I want you on this one, 1 and 3. Are you available? Folks love that, right? And there's there's not necessarily, everybody's a 1099 for me, so not necessarily a long-term commitment. But I think, again, right, in the world where you've got a lot of experienced people that are senior, that have had, a bumpy road the last couple of years. It's a really different way to look at things. And I think from a client perspective, folks don't know what they don't, they don't know what they want a lot of the time, especially in marketing. It's like the most nebulous, everybody knows how to do it. Everybody thinks they know marketing. It's the art and science, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's one of those places where it's like, if you can lay the foundation and then help them build that so that your client feels secure. I've even gone so far to work myself out of a job where I'm like, by the way, you should hire a full-time person now and let me help you hire them, because it's what's best for the business. And so that's been, I think it's just been a model that, both the clients as well as people working for me really like doing.
Yeah. Aligning yourself with the other person's business success, is almost guaranteed. If you can do it, if you can help them succeed, almost guaranteed way
Correct.
To grow a business.
Correct.
One other thing you mentioned that I want to just put a fine point on was you said there's essentially safety, or you thought there was going to be more safety in creating your own business and having this in your own hands versus working at a larger company, which is a really interesting flip of how a lot of people think about work.
Totally. I think that, and again, this is like my personal statement, and I'm, whatever level of experience, right, in terms of having had a pretty significant career in really large organizations, in places that I've spent 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think today's climate is, especially for super senior folks, you are the first ones on the block. They need to cut costs. Things aren't going right. It's your fault. And especially marketing has a tenure on average of a CMO is 12 to 18 months. Not a lot of safety or security in that framework. So that's sort of part one. And then part two is I got to the point again in my career where it was too much about I'm not great at the politics. I can play it, but I don't love it. And when you're that full-time employee, you have to play the politics all the time. And my role as a consultant now and as an outsider is, and I say this all the time to folks, is A, you're hiring me for my expertise, right? B, I'm going to tell you honestly. And what I'll say to folks all the time is, I have no horse in this race. I'm not looking for a promotion. I'm not looking for a full-time role. And I've been offered a couple, in the last 2 years, are like, well, why don't you just come and work for us? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll help you hire somebody. But it allows me to, sort of operate at a level of integrity and authenticity, and just makes me feel good about what I'm doing kind of every day. The other thing I'll say also, Alex, and just back to why did I create this? I think it also goes back to sort of a mindset of I'll be totally real. It was super scary, right? Lots of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But it's also, and this is something I coach people on all the time, it actually doesn't matter. Just go do it. And it's how I've sort of lived a lot of, I used to do before knee surgery and whatnot. I used to do a lot of races, triathlons and, half marathons and running races and whatnot. And I would often sign myself up for them when I was in my worst shape ever. And because I knew, okay, oh my gosh, you just signed yourself up for this, you better actually go get ready and go do it. So it's kind of that same mindset of you can't, if you say you're going to do it or you've committed to doing it, now you just got to figure it out.
Very good motivation. That social pressure, commit
Totally.
to somebody and then, you're going to be successful.
Absolutely.
So you briefly mentioned, and hopefully I'm not spoofing. I don't think I am the next segment, but you've been a CMO full-time as well. Were there things that you liked about being a full-time CMO? I feel like CMO is a role that I worked at Meta. I led teams there. I talked to people every week and they were like, I want to be a CMO one day. I want to be the chief marketing officer. And I don't know if people, really know what that's like.
I think there's great aspects of it. And then there's, sort of real sort of myth around it, right? That you're sitting in the creative room and you're doing all, you're really not, right? You're sitting looking at your financial statements with the rest of the board or the rest of the C-suite. You are working on organization, you're working on costs and efficiency. And unfortunately, in the role that I was in, we just weren't as aligned as I would have liked to be on KPIs, strategy, direction, etc. And we spent and it was sort of also in that era of a lot of reorganization. So I spent a lot of time laying other people off, which was not so great. And so, for me, I think I got a lot out of it in terms of, sort of also what to look for to make sure that things are a great fit for me. It's made me probably better in this role. So in a lot of ways, I think, when things don't go your way, it's actually your best learning opportunities because you're like, oh, let me not do that again. And so I think, a lot of folks, right? I think for some people, CMO is fantastic. My role it was a great learning opportunity. And, I think every single job or every single role is a ladder to the next, gives you some insight into the next thing.
I think you're teeing this up perfectly for us to take a very short break. You can talk more about how you got to be where you are today.
Crossroads.
Deb, was there a decision or moment in your career that you think was pivotal in getting you to where you are today?
I think that there's sort of two things that I've sort of stuck by in my career throughout. I don't know if it was any one moment, but there's really two sort of mantras that I think about in terms of my career today. One is I always had a really strong belief in my own capabilities. So I think that's really important. You got to have confidence, right? Because if you don't believe it, nobody else is going to believe it. One of the things that I think I got dinged for earlier in my career, but now serves me really well, is I never said no to a great opportunity. So things that weren't necessarily linear to becoming a CMO. Like I had this great opportunity when I was at SAP where I did a fellowship with RED, which is Fighting AIDS in Africa, run by Bono, where SAP and RED were partnering up. And they said, does any marketing leader want to come and help RED with marketing from the inside? And I was like, yes, please. And so went and did that for 6-8 months, actually went to Africa with them, which was incredible. Safari, went and saw all the places that they're deploying those funds to. Really outstanding just experience.
Did you get to meet Bono?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
That was I will say that was a good part of my motivation. Yeah, it was a good part of my motivation. Did not happen, but that's okay. But that was a really fantastic experience. Did it necessarily give me the next rung of the ladder? Not necessarily, but something that, was so critical for me just from a personal level. I also did inside of SAP, they were running an entrepreneurship program where you basically started a new company inside of SAP. And so they ran it like a Shark Tank kind of thing. I was going back and forth to Berlin for almost a year. And our team won. And so that was a cool experience. Again, that sort of gave me a little bit of the bug around, oh, maybe I do want to run my own business and maybe I do want to be an entrepreneur. So I think never saying no to an opportunity that you think is important, whether anybody else doesn't matter, right? It's your career, it's your future, it's your pathway. You've got to take hold of it yourself. I think the other thing is, if you're looking for a job, is finding a manager that you respect. Right? Somebody that you can actually get along with, that's going to have your back, that you can talk to, that you're going to learn something from. Because this is whether people really recognize that or not, this is your day-to-day person. This is the person that's going to help your career or hurt your career. And so I think really thinking about your manager and thinking about that role in your decision-making is super important. And again, have had those moments where I haven't picked the best manager, and you feel it every single day. So I think those two things are sort of big parts of, how I've sort of navigated my career. I think the last thing I'll say, and this isn't necessarily one of, sort of hard and fast rule, but something that my dad told me really early on was always ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. So if you want, something to be built in or an opportunity or an idea or whatever it is, ask. You have to ask because people can't read your mind and your work doesn't just show itself. And so you have to ask.
The idea of being open to opportunity and allowing yourself to take advantage of things like working with RED and going to Africa, that is so powerful. It's actually come up in a number of conversations that I've had with really successful people is they're like, I actually made the space to be able to make those jumps that ended up helping me learn something, accelerate my career. I also really appreciated the idea of being an entrepreneur at a place like SAP,
Yeah.
where you can, you're a part of a huge established business. However, I assume you got to build something, right? You still got to kind of get the itch for,
Yeah.
and actually probably build the skills for actually running a business,
Totally.
which I can imagine was really invaluable.
It was competitive and it was uncertain and it was all the things. But like to the safety question earlier, there was the safety net to it, right? I was getting paid and it wasn't, it wasn't a week to week kind of thing. It was a great experience.
Also, I love the point about your dad. If you don't get it, or sorry, if you don't ask, you don't get it. I always am curious how people growing up in their relationships with their parents, like, I don't know, that influence what you've done and how you've thought about business.
So my parents are divorced and my dad would always say to us from a young age, and he's super supportive, but he would say from a young age, you need to be able to support yourself, right? You need to be able to take care of yourself. Don't rely on anybody else to be able to take care of you. Period. End of story. So it was really from a very early age. You better figure it out, Deb, because this is up to you. So like from a really young age, I really, I always sort of had this internal mental mantra of like, you can do whatever it is that you're going to tell yourself you can do. And I just believed it.
I love that. Yeah.
It's stupidly simple, but it's really, I think it's a mindset, and yeah, it falters sometimes, but it's really, I think it serves people well when if you believe it, other people will believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes stupid, simple stuff is some of the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that as marketers.
Absolutely.
Keep it simple. Okay, so another thing I want to dig into is that you have been really involved with mentorship and it's getting women into impactful roles, investing in women. I believe you're a operating partner, right, for the 98, which is a fund that invests in women, women-founded startups.
Yep.
How did you get into that? I mean, I realize I'm sure there's tons of motivations, but I'm curious, like, how did you decide to make that a part of what you wanted to do? Tell me about like how that's been important to your career.
Yeah, especially as a woman in technology, I was often either the only woman in the room or the only female commercial leader in the room, right? So, and I love my HR friends, but it would almost always be, right, Deb and an HR person, and everybody else was men. And so I grew up that way, right, in industry and in business, and especially even being a mom, right? It was sort of the models weren't always there of having kids and a career and being, and doing it all, right, which is a terrible term. So I didn't always have the models. And it's funny, it's one of the things I've reflected on is I often hear, especially a lot of guys, and I don't know if you've heard of it, the Founders Podcast, which I'm also obsessed with. I love yours as well, Alex. But all these guys are talking about mentors and sponsors and whatnot. And I didn't really have that, to be honest with you. Like I didn't have a lot of mentors or sponsors. I think it's, whether it's me or, whatever. And so it was sort of something that I felt like was an opportunity and something I wanted to give back to people, because I would have loved that in my 20s, right? Some, woman that had 20 years experience on me saying like, actually don't worry about XYZ or go do this or, whatever it was, or be able to just get some honest advice based on experience. I would have really, really appreciated that. And so I think it's something that I am super happy to do. And I do all the time. I actually just started on intro.co to be able to be an advisor on demand for anybody. So it's something that I'm super passionate about, and I'll, whether it's my friends' kids or anybody, right? I almost always give my time.
Having a sponsor or a mentor is so important. And to your point, yes, I feel like all of these successful founders always talk about the mentors and sponsors that they've had.
Right.
And I agree with you. It is like, it's really great that you're doing that, because it's also very powerful to have someone that you kind of can see yourself in down the road. Again, it's great whenever the guy CMO, mentor someone. And I think they should, to be very clear. I think they should. At the same time, it sometimes can be harder to relate.
And I think sometimes, especially again, like as a woman and, mom and whatnot, it's just a different dynamic. A lot of these guys, right? They've got a wife at home, and not that the wife doesn't work or whatnot. And I'm not, but there's somebody else taking that mental load. There's a stat I was just reading about it. I think I published it on LinkedIn recently that women with families that work spend at least 8.5 hours more every week on unseen work. And that's like the minimum. I said that to somebody, they were like 8.5 hours. Oh my God, I spend like 20 hours more a week. So I think having somebody that actually understands the real dynamic of all of that is super important and can be really powerful. And it's just more, it's more real, right? Versus like, oh, you should just work harder. Like, okay, well, how much harder do you want me to work?
No, 100%. And there, to your point, there are just different dynamics, and there are different things that I don't think they're right, but women have to they're in a double bind sometimes about trying to, be assertive versus, welcoming. I guess a really challenging situation to have someone that relates to those feelings and those situations.
Yeah. And I think just being an extrovert, and I just had a lot of women come to me, men as well, just asking me for advice. So like, how can I deal with this? Because, it's tough sometimes, right? We're all in our own little brains and heads, and we think, it's hard to get out of it sometimes. So I tend to give pretty straightforward and good advice.
One last fast thing here, though. How did you get involved with the 98 and with Chief? Were these things you sought out?
Chief, I found, to be honest with you, on LinkedIn. Like, they reached out to me on LinkedIn. And it was early days. Like, I think I was probably in year 1 of LinkedIn after they launched. And again, like, having never had really a mentor or a sponsor, that opportunity to connect with other senior women at that level was really attractive to me. The 98, it was actually that job that I didn't take after I was CMO at Quantcast. And one of the board members of the job that I was offered, what is the principal of the 98? And so we connected. And so through that, again, like, this is all about your network. So like, my best advice to people is always like, take the call, go to the event, do not stop, right? I just had this conversation with literally 3 different people in the last week. I'm like, that are in between, sort of what they're doing. And my answer to them is like, just rev up the engine. Like, you just got to crank it all up. It's to every single movement creates another movement, and it just makes the universe work for you.
You're setting up these great transitions. Okay, let's take one more little break. You've already given so much advice, but then we'll get some of your best career advice.
A message to a future traveler.
Deb, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone searching for their best job?
One, no job is necessarily the best job. Every job is a step to the next, right? In your career, right? Not necessarily to your next job, but in your career. So thinking about what role does that job play in my career is a really important thing versus, can I get that job? You know what I mean? Like, so what role does that play? How is it going to help me advance my skill set? How is it going to help me reach whatever goal I have? I think the other thing I would say is like, don't be afraid to go for the job, right? Go for the thing that you think you're not qualified for, especially if you're gritty, hardworking, conscientious, and smart enough, right? You don't have to be brilliant, but like, there is a lot to be said for gritty, hardworking, conscientious, detail-oriented, and smart enough. There's a lot of people that are super talented that don't have those qualities that are not successful. So having confidence in yourself and just going for the job is a great way to think about it. And, especially if you're young, don't put up your own barriers. I did that long ago to myself, right? As well as like, oh, I'm too old to like switch something or, oh, I don't think I can get that. I think let's not put up like the blockades for yourself. Let somebody else do that. Go for it. Like, that's my best advice, is just go for it.
This whole segment has been chock full of phenomenal advice, but I think that's a great piece to end on. So don't put up your own barriers, everybody. Actually go for it. Deb, this has been so much fun.
Thanks for
having me. It really has.
Alex.
I love these because I get to learn from really smart people. And like, to your point about being curious and nerding out and asking people about their careers. Like that's
Totally.
also what I love. So kindred spirit there. So thank you. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you or a Brave New World?
They can certainly find me on LinkedIn. So Deb Stambaugh. You can also find me at bravenewworldinc.com. And then if you want advisory on intro.co.
Follow Deb. Get at her on intro.com 100%. So Deb, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, send it to a friend and give us a follow. We're looking forward to making more of the best job I've ever had.
So I read that a Nanette Lepore dress was your first real investment. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So when I was in my, early 20s, Nanette Lepore, she's an amazing designer and still super current today, but she was like it, right? It was high end and it was beautiful. So my girlfriend and I, who's actually also an amazing entrepreneur, she runs Tarte, the makeup brand. We were shopping and I fell in love with this dress and I was like, this is way too much for me. I'm never going to buy this. And she's like, just buy it. And it was my power outfit. It was the one that I went to every time I had a big interview or I had to, present. The cool part about this story is that fast forward to, 2 months ago, I ended up meeting Nanette Lepore at her studio. I told her this story that she was my first real investment and it totally made her day. She let me do a selfie with her and then I posted about it on LinkedIn and I can't tell you the number of people that responded, even privately. They're like, oh my God, I bought a pair of Cole Haan shoes or I bought a Brooks Brothers suit. Ton of women responded with, I also bought an Nanette Lepore. And it was just such a cool full circle moment. And again, invest in yourself. You can't take it with you. So don't be frivolous. Have a little fun with it.